Hi, this is Kylie Thompson, host of Food for Thought. Thanks for listening to the following podcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to the Leadership Revolution podcast. We want to take a moment and say how happy and honoured we are that you have chosen to take time out of your week to join us today. We're excited to have you with us. If this is your first time listening, our vision is to build healthier families and communities through education and leadership, which begins by leading ourselves from the heart. We invite you to be fully present as you listen and judge later, because it's not easy to do both at the same time. So sit back, relax and enjoy.
Hey, my friend, I am David, your host of the Leadership Revolution, and I have the privilege to serve you every other week as your guide. Today, we have part 2 with Naomi Trentham. Did I say it right this time?
That's fine.
Welcome back. We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me again.
Again, yeah. This is many more to come. Before we start off every show, we pray, and I would like to lead us in prayer today. Dear Dad, I want to thank you for the opportunity to give us the gift of speech. Let our words be seeds of inspiration to awaken the places where you want your people to live their best life. I don't know who's listening right now, and I don't know who's going to be listening later, but I pray that by the sound of my voice, they receive health, healing, favor, provision, and protection over them. I pray that they would have a receptive heart and an open mind in Jesus' name. So
Amen.
Excited today to talk about nonverbal communication. I know in our last episode, we were leading into it with the mask and how that would interrupt our communication. Naomi, I want to hear your thoughts, because this is your baby. This is your love. This is your gifting. Like, how is it going to impact our communication, especially with the youth?
Well, I think let's go back even further to babies. So I was up in London a few weeks ago, and I was out in the city, and I was seeing these parents, quite a few families, parents pushing around these prams with babies, and the babies are facing them, but the parents are wearing masks. And one of the things I learned actually when I became a parent myself, and then since further with my training, is that kids learn by mirroring. Mm-hmm. And even if you have like a 1-year-old, and as a parent, you look at them blankly with no interaction and no expression, they will begin to cry because they look to your face all the time to pick up how you're feeling. And so not having access to the full face is actually slowing down and could potentially interrupt even the neurological development as well as the emotional development of infants. So you multiply that into every setting that they're in out in public, it's going to disrupt something. I mean, I haven't researched this particularly, it was just something that began to occur to me. Because even with a young baby, if you know, a newborn, 2 or 3 weeks old, if you hold them and you, for example, stick out your tongue, they mirror that. They will do the same thing. Or they try and reflect the shape of your mouth. And that's how we learn language. That's how we learn to lip read. That's how we learn expression and what different things mean. And so knocking that out is, I think, a real problem. And I was reading a news report on the BBC yesterday about how there's now a call, like head teachers in the UK are now saying to the government, can kids wear masks in school? Because then it's easier for us to control the virus, which is questionable. And my immediate thought, I felt really heartbroken. Like, how are they going to know? How is a teacher going to know if a child is sad? How is another child going to know if they're being smiled at or if they're laughing, or all of those expressions, the way we connect without, take language out. And when learning is happening in schools, the teacher's doing the talking, the kids are quiet. So how are they going to know? How are they going to know how everybody is? It's going to it can have a huge adverse effect on emotional and mental well-being. And to me, it's just firing off alarm bells.
Yeah, I know. I think you posted a recent article about something with, what was it on? It was on LinkedIn. You posted a recent article.
The article I posted yesterday was about how the mental health of teenagers has improved being at home in lockdown instead of in school.
Oh, okay. So,
And now we're looking at sending them back into school and covering up their faces and keeping them away from each other.
so how do you see the correlation between mental health and the lack of nonverbal communication?
So if you walk past someone on the street and they smile, like even if you don't know them, you can flash a smile and you feel happier, don't you? You can like smile, there we go. So, emotion is infectious and expression is infectious. And for teenagers particularly, if you show them 40 different people with different facial expressions, the teenage brain and the way it develops means that they are they're in that time of life where they're wanting to push out and find who they are. And so they are naturally on the defensive all the time. So they will read a neutral expression as negative. They will read a negative expression as negative. Unless somebody's overtly happy, they will perceive it to be neutral or negative. They're not going to see anything else. It's pretty much going to be negative. So then you cover up the faces of those teenagers and you put them in the same space. Where are they picking up the positive energy? Where are they feeling whether or not that person's okay with them? How are they going to know if there isn't the facial expressions? But the other thing around nonverbal communication, because that's talking about facial expressions, is in recent years, if you look on, there's an organization called HeartMath, HeartMath, and they have discovered a cluster of neurons in the heart, the physical heart, that mirrors the neurons in the amygdala, the emotional core of the brain. So that means our physical hearts experience emotion. That's why our heart rate goes up and things change. I think we touched on that last time. What they've discovered is the electromagnetic field of the heart is 3 feet. So that's why you can be in a room and it's already happy and somebody will come in and sit down, and if they're in a bad mood, the atmosphere changes. Because literally the electromagnetic field around them is changing the environment and we can pick it up.
Oh my goodness. That's
right.
Amazing.
What's social distancing? How far away do we have to stay from one another?
6 feet.
Right. So we're knocking out the ability to even pick up on the emotional experience of another person.
So my question would be, since these mandates that are being encouraged, enforced, whatever adjective you're using, is it going to, for those who can communicate verbally, would it then increase the level of verbal communication since we're not able to read nonverbal?
Well, you'd hope so, but then you have to assume that they have the language they need to communicate what they need. And most people don't. So emotion coaching, what I do is about is helping people cultivate and enable a language around their emotional experience. But most people don't have that. Most people aren't raised with an emotional language. Most people are raised not to pay attention to their emotions. So unless we're finding a way to enable young people to communicate what is going on for them, and if you've got a class of 25 kids, how can they all communicate need? How can a teacher stand there and be teaching a lesson and know if that kid in the corner is okay? That if a kid looks like, they're welling up, is that allergies? Is it because they're sad? Is it because they're laughing under there? How do you know? And if they're not allowed near them, you can't even pick up on the vibes that, we talk about picking up each other's vibes. It's literally a thing. And we're taking that out. So what's this going to do to this entire world of young people who will, to be fair, most of them outside of school aren't following social distancing from what I'm seeing, but but I think that's a kind of something in them that's saying no. Like there's an absolute need in all of us to connect, and it will either mean that a whole new ability and awakening and how to connect differently will emerge, or we're going to end up with an absolute phenomenal emotional mental health crisis on our hands.
Yeah, I can definitely see it trending in that way, that mental health can be affected, and it can just be a trickle down effect. Now, why is it so important for us as people, as individuals, as human, to be connected to the people around us? What's your thoughts around that?
Well, I think it's the way we're made for relationship, isn't it? I mean, you know, you and I are both friends of God, and he wants relationship and connection with us. I believe that's why we were made as a human race, to connect and to love and to relate. And, you know, I mean, even it's interesting. I've just been up in London this weekend with a friend, and coming home yesterday, having had this like high level connection for 2 days, coming home, I felt sad yesterday. I felt a sense of loss, that suddenly I'm back to being the only adult around. And so coming out of, even though during lockdown, I began to get content with that and okay with my own company. Beginning to come out and spending time with people again has made me realize how much I need that. So something acutely in us, we're designed for connection. It's the way we're made. And so taking out multiple strands of communication, you know, whether it is the vibrations, the signals that we're sending out, whether it's, you know, the covering up our mouths, even just being out less, I think it brings a sense of disconnection, which in itself brings a sense of aloneness.
Loneliness, that is powerful. Hearing you talk about experiencing being with the people you were with in London and coming back home, very similar. This past weekend, I took my boys out to be around some people, because they're only around me, myself, my wife, and each other. And as a result of that, like, I saw the level of happiness from them. They're just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. There's another human being. David, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to go out some more. And they're just like energized. And what I'm hearing from you is that we're created to connect. And then there's such power when we're connected to each other. Now, with the mandates, with what's going on in the series that we're on about where do we go from here, especially in the education sector, like what would be a solution to navigating the waters of, okay, here are the rules. How do we navigate and still connect where there's an agenda possibly that is trying to remove the connection and creating more disconnect? How could we navigate through that?
I think it's interesting. So I had a long chat this morning with a guy about this, and we were talking about how we feel about being rule breakers, about how we feel about going against the government mandates, because I don't want people to feel unsafe. I don't want to, you know, on the time, you know, when I've gone into stores and put a mask on, it's not been because I think it's making a difference. You know, I know there's all sorts of theories and things out there, but personally, I feel really uncomfortable wearing one. The reason I've done it is because I don't want to get that shop assistant into trouble. I don't want them to have a problem on their hands. But it's an interesting one, because I think the most important thing we can do is not be afraid. You know, everybody's been going on and on about COVID and what it's going to do, but actually the majority of people are not harmed. If they get it, they're not harmed. A lot of people are asymptomatic anyway. And I think the worst thing we can do is instill fear, and masks instill fear. So if you really want to stick to the rules, then get a visor instead. You know, I don't know if you've got those over there. We've got them here. You know, headband with a visor. It's enabling as much open contact as possible. Get outside. They've said if you're outside, the virus can't transmit anything like as much. So, you know, why are we teaching kids in classrooms? Why aren't we teaching them on the fields? You know, there's, you know, or even video. It's better to do a video like we're doing now to see each other's faces than it is to sit in the same space with a mask on.
Yeah.
So I think there's opportunity for creativity, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this entire COVID-19 and like we say in the hood, Corona, has caused our education system to literally shake at its foundation of what we thought was best practices, and now we're forced to innovate. And the reason, me personally, I don't like wearing masks, because I realize how hot my breath is. And
Yeah.
and if I'm going to the grocery store early and I just roll out of bed and I'm just like, whew,
Oh.
because it just blows right back in your face.
Poisoning yourself, David.
I know that's self-torture, self-inflicting harm. But the innovation and how it's being interrupted, I think we're at an opportune time, and I'm excited to see how our educational system advances and actually pivots. And at the same time too, I know that you and your team is working on something that our world needs to talk about more. And most importantly, our schools need it more. And could you elaborate like what you and your team are actually working on in this very time?
So there's two things that we've been involved with. One is there's a project called Time for Change, which is being launched on the 31st of August in the UK, which is a collaboration of a whole number of people to create, I guess it's like a prospectus or a dossier of how things need to be different in order to emotionally engage in education. So we're looking at autonomy for teachers and how they deliver their subjects. We're looking at kids being given freedom to explore and learn differently. So, you know, you've got a kid who, for example, might love baseball, hates history, won't engage in history. Well, kids don't need to know, you know, in the US, for example, they don't need to know the order of all the presidents. Why do they need, how does that serve them in adulthood, knowing that? When it's in, that information is in their pocket. It doesn't. So why teach them that? But what you can say to that kid is, okay, you go off and you find out who won whatever your World Cup of baseball is. I don't know what that is, but
World Series.
There you go. So I want you to go off and find who won the World Series in 1928, 1937, 1942, 1959, random years. Go off and find that and bring me that information. What does that teach the kid? How to research historically how the game has changed. They'll see images, how the uniforms change, how the stadiums have changed, how big the game has become. They will learn stuff, but they'll learn to research. That's a skill. It's a life skill, and it's history. So it's and that kind of approach to learning, what that does is not only does it leave it will leave all kids feeling validated, it'll leave them interested and excited in the subject matter. They will learn what they're passionate about sooner. But also for kids with special educational needs, they will feel seen and covered. For care experienced children who've gone through trauma, they will feel seen and covered. It creates safety. I see you makes them feel safe. So the whole when I was approached to be involved with this project, I was asked to do was create a piece of a prose, as it were, that expresses why emotional engagement or emotional intelligence underpins everything of worth in society and education. So quite a challenge. With the support of my team, we pulled that together, and it's formed part of this whole wider thing. Now, other than the infographics and the logo and the introduction that's got our piece in it, I haven't seen anything yet, but it's going to be launched a massive media campaign. There's all sorts of influential people on board. Now, this isn't about taking over government. What we're trying to do is make a noise so loud that we can't be ignored. It's about being an advocate for future generations. It's about building a better system. So that's kind of one aspect. And trusting, the way it's all come together, it feels very purposeful, like there's a lot more behind it than just a few good ideas of a few good men. It feels like, the universe, God, is somehow behind it. It's been quite phenomenal the way it's come together. But also the team and I, we have come together and we've written what we're calling an emotional resilient leadership, is what this course is called. It's an 8-week course for, over here we call them sixth formers. That's 17, 18-year-olds. It's the last 2 years of mandatory education here in the UK. Because what we're recognizing is that even if the education system begins to change and emotional engagement kicks in, that there's going to be a whole swathe of kids that don't get to benefit from that that are in the upper end of the education system now. And this course, it looks at filters, so stories we tell ourselves, how our histories influence our responses and our approach. It looks at boundaries, autonomy, mindsets. We also go into dreams and passion and the value that you bring to the world as individuals and why we're all needed and how we all have a part to play. We look at forgiveness and how to let go of stuff. And really it's about creating a really solid foundation that's a springboard for real life, as it were. So it's, there's loads in there. But the idea is that we become so there's three of us on the team. There's myself doing most of the emotional engagement and forgiveness side of stuff. And then there's Ollie, who's doing he does a lot on mindset and self-talk. And Marie brings things around performance, and she's bringing a lot of tools around how to identify your core values and things like that. So we're aiming to all learn each other's stuff really, really well, and then be able to train. We feel like we're going to need a lot of people to train up to get this established in schools across the world eventually. We hope. So yeah, it's exciting. So we've actually just next week we're doing a taster day for a bunch of kids, teenagers down here in Bath, before hopefully launching in a school in London in the autumn.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I believe that you're on some cutting edge stuff and exclusive. Beer, beer, beer. You heard it on the Leadership Revolution first. And I think it's going to be like the Amazon of education in a way. Here's why. Because our sons just did their social emotional class, and they were teaching on anger management. And the thing that he took away from the anger management was, if you feel upset, walk away. Now, that is extremely practical, but at the same time, too, it doesn't address the actual root cause of exploring why you feel that anger.
Well, it's why you feel that anger, and what does it tell you need?
Yeah. And I learned from you is that we don't have any negative emotions, and that we just have emotions indicating.
All emotion is communication. It's all communicating a need.
Yeah.
All of it.
And it blew my mind when he was like, yeah, the thing I took away from my anger management social emotional class was, when I'm angry, walk away. That doesn't actually solve why he feels angry. Mm-hmm. And the thing that makes me a little bit sad and exciting, but the sad part is that even though COVID has interrupted a lot of stuff, but I see a lot of the school system just converting over to online, but teaching the same things.
Stuff. Yeah.
In just a different vehicle. It's like, if music is bad on a CD player, right? For those of you who don't know, the CD player is a little disc that you play back in the days. It's ancient, but
I grew up with cassettes.
Yeah, that's really there. That's like when Jesus roamed the world. Look out with dinosaurs, made fires out of stone. Were you there when they made the first wheel? The first wheel? Yeah.
Okay, for listeners, I am not that old.
I'm kidding. Naomi's my friend. So it's like music being bad on a CD player, and then you converting it over to streaming. Like, the music is still bad. It doesn't make it
right. No.
And that's where I see education heading, just converting over. But what you and your team is doing, which I think is cutting edge, is actually exploring what's deep down inside, then equipping them with the tools to be successful, and most importantly, empowering them to go find the answers. And now they are mobilized and they feel confident, and then that trickles down to every other area of their lives.
Exactly. And actually, something that came through from some stuff that went on this weekend is that the two things people respond to are confidence and authenticity. So if we can instill confidence and authenticity to our young people, it's going to change everything for their future. And I was actually with a client yesterday, and she was talking about how she gets anxious about social media posts and how they're going to be perceived, and maybe I should do it a bit like this and a bit like that. And I was like, well, people aren't looking for you to tick their boxes. They're looking to see if you're the real deal. So you just be confident showing up as you, and you will see a shift. And she messaged me today about another situation, and she was like, I don't know what to do. And before I had a chance to reply, she responded saying, actually, I just decided to be honest and be real about what's going on for me. And the situation was resolved before I even had a chance to check in with her. So it's authenticity and confidence is what we all need in order to succeed in what we do. That's what gives us credibility. So, but currently our education system, I don't know about yours, knocks confidence out, not being allowed to talk about emotions, not being able to bring in what's really going on for people, and recognize the emotional needs and what solutions are required, knocks that out as well. So we are literally putting kids through, in the UK, it's 14 years in compulsory education, and we're spitting them out the other end, having no clue who they are.
Yeah, and I see how it relates even to what we're currently going through. So you talk about being authentic and exuding confidence. Now, when we wear our masks, then it, create another barrier of being seen. And, and when we don't feel seen, it reduces our level of confidence. So in the nonverbal cues that you talked about, not connecting, and then what is a trickle down effect of mental illness and just, having a breakdown. So this is why, right? This is why we need what you and your team are doing, because it will be the antidote. And I love watching movies where like apocalypse and just like you get stung by or bitten by an alien, and now you have to have the antidote in order to survive. I believe that what you're doing and what your team is doing is the antidote to heal the world in a way that we've never experienced, but most importantly, get us to a place where we're more authentic and we have a greater confidence, and that influences our credibility. So that's all the time we have for today. Naomi, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Awesome.
Pleasure to join you.
What'd you say?
I said it's a pleasure to join you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I know, it's a pleasure. And I want to leave you all with something encouraging, is practicing being authentic, and that's showing up every day and being honest. That's as simple as that. And I want you all to remember something. If we as leaders are to set ourselves apart, we must start by leading through love, which always comes from the heart.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Leadership Revolution podcast. We hope you were blessed. We value feedback from our listeners, so please leave a comment letting us know what you found helpful, challenging, or left you wanting to know more. New Leadership Revolution messages will be released every other Wednesday. Hit subscribe to be sure not to miss out. To stay in the know on our latest news, events and initiatives, follow Shepherd Revolution on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. Thank you again for coming on this journey with us. We love you, and as you go about the rest of your day, we bless you to lead from your heart.